Hi, Mike Greenblatt.
Hey,
How are you?
great. How are you?
How do we know each other, Mike?
You're the son of my very best friend in the whole world. Your father is a great man. He was an editor in New York City for many, many years. He's the man that changed Modern Screen, America's classic movie magazine, into Modern Screen's country music, which lasted for 10 years in the 90s, that I was the editor of. He was the creative director. He also co-founded Metal Maniacs magazine, and that's still in existence. Many of his ideas are still going strong. He was a marketing and publishing genius, your father was.
That is correct. And you've been a music journalist now for how long?
I've been a music journalist since a couple of years after Woodstock. Woodstock was 69. I started my career in 73.
And thank you for not burying the lead there. We should take a little step back and say that you recently wrote and had published a new book called Woodstock Back to Yasgur's Farm, specifically published for the 50th anniversary of the Woodstock Festival. Correct?
That is, well, actually it was released a month before the 50th anniversary on July 9th, and it's doing very well. There was a big jump in sales during the August 15th to 18th time frame when the actual anniversary took place. But I was pleased to find out from the publisher that it's been averaging about 100 books a week still ever since its July 9 release.
Oh, that's great to hear. And it's coincidental because I recently met one of the founders of the Woodstock Festival when I was at the film festival that takes place up there every year. This past fall, I was up there and I got to meet him.
Michael Lang.
That's right. And it was very surreal to meet him because I think we've been Facebook friends for many years, but I've never met him in all the time that I've been reading about him and about the festival and about all the different musicians that I've read their books over the years and their interactions with him. And to finally come face to face was quite a surreal experience. Anyway, I hope to get Michael on the podcast. That's essentially was the idea why I reached out to him recently. But the book has been doing well, and that's really terrific to hear.
Yeah, they're very pleased with the sales and with my publicity campaign, and looks like I'll be writing under their banner now.
Okay, let's get into the book a little bit. There are a number of books that have come out about Woodstock, especially in light of the 50th anniversary. But the difference is you actually went to Woodstock. You were actually there, which is incredible, right? I mean, how old were you?
18.
And the book is a first-hand account of your time there, but you've woven in other perspectives from people that were there or musicians that were there who performed. But how would you describe the book?
Yeah, it's a tapestry of 32 interviews with the artists, the people that made it happen, the people behind the scenes, the sound guy, the light guy, the fans, and myself, woven into hopefully what I think is a cohesive whole, a mosaic, if you will, of 32 different perspectives.
Okay, so I'm interested in also just in your anecdotes from having gone there too. So let's lay it out here. You, as you mentioned, were 18 years old. How did it go? You and your best friend decided just in the spur of the moment you were going to go attend Woodstock. How did it come about that you guys ended up there?
Well, first of all, we weren't going to go. We were going to go see Led Zeppelin in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And we were all excited to see Zeppelin, but we worked at an insurance company downtown Newark, Concord Insurance, which had the radio on all day, and we kept hearing the advertisements for this festival with all of our favorite bands at the same time on the same stage. We couldn't not go.
So you just threw away the Zeppelin tickets?
No, we never bought the Zeppelin tickets. We were just going to go down there with no tickets. I don't know what we thought. But we did buy tickets for Woodstock, though. We went to the Last Straw, a head shop in Bloomfield, New Jersey, and we bought 2 tickets for $17.50 each that gave us all 3 days each.
And who did you go with?
I went with my good friend Neil Yasgur, who I remember a week, maybe a month before Woodstock, when man first walked on the moon. I remember playing Monopoly with him all night that night. He was a good buddy of mine. At the time, he was totally straight, so he didn't so much as smoke any pot or drop any acid at Woodstock all 4 days, while I was blitzed on my ass all 4 days from both of those things.
But I don't know if you guys brought your own, but I know that people were sharing every conceivable drug, good or bad, over that weekend.
Nothing bad. Everything was good.
Well, there was the brown acid.
Even that was good. Although they did a warning from the stage right after I took it, and I got very upset, and I said, "Oh no, I just took it."
I guess there was no putting the genie back in that bottle, was there?
No, but it was fine for me. I really enjoyed it. In fact, it helped me, come to think of it, on Sunday, when the final day of the festival became a total nightmare because of the monsoon that ripped through the grounds. And I was not prepared for such weather, having left all our stuff back at the car, the food, the tents, the pot, the water, the extra clothing, the sleeping bags, the towels, everything was back at the car.
You and Neil both packed the car, right, with all of your necessities for the weekend, right? But because you got so stoned, I guess, or it was so crowded, you couldn't ever find your way back to the car? Is that what happened?
We didn't know where the car was.
It had to have been complete chaos there. And if I recall, you guys were very close to the stage, weren't you? What made you go the day before the festival? I mean, it turns out it was great. It was a great advantage. But what inspired you to leave early?
Yeah, we got there the day before the festival, and we set up camp. It hardly was a camp. We sat on the grass right in front of the stage. I think there was 500,000 people. I think we were about maybe 50 or 60 people deep. That's it. We were right there. I mean, we could see the facial expressions of the artists as they performed. That's how close we were.
At what point did you guys understand the sheer scope of this concert? And also, like, when did it become clear that this was just going to turn out to be a free concert for everybody?
Back then, there was never any plans. We flew by the seat of our pants with every decision we ever made. I think we went the day before because we were going to go camping. We were going to camp out with our tent and sleeping bags right there in front of the stage for 4 days. We had no idea what we were getting involved with. Nobody did. When we got there Thursday and we parked the car and we figured, well, let's just see where the stage is. We'll come back for our stuff later. We hitched a ride to the stage area. Down a mountain, a Volkswagen Bug stopped for us with about 8 hippies in it. But they still stopped and said, we have no room in the car, but you could stand on the running board and hold on from the outside in, and we'll take you there. We said, oh, okay. And they took off like a bat out of hell down the mountain. I thought I was going to die. And they stopped and we fell off and we said, thanks a lot. We dusted ourselves off and we found the stage. It was mammoth. They were still working on the stage. And we said, well, where do we go? Where do we get in? Who do we give our tickets to? There was nobody to give our tickets to, so we threw them away. And we got in front of the stage, and we hung out all night with our neighbors. We had a great time. Tailgating hadn't been invented yet, but we basically tailgated. And then to answer your question, I realized the scope of the event the next morning. When we woke up, we were still in front of the stage. Only the couple of hundred people that were around us had turned into a couple of thousand people. And then I turned around and I saw a vista of humanity. I'd never seen so many people in one place in my whole life. We freaked out.
Right. In front of the stage where you were, was there some sort of a slope behind you where you could sort of see everything? Oh, there was.
Yeah, there was. It was a bowl.
I see.
And the stage was at the bottom of the bowl, and if you just walked from the stage in the direct opposite direction, there would be a mountain, and then the parking lot was up on top of the mountain. I went back 49 years later to interview the curator of the museum at Bethel Woods, which is on the site, a wonderful establishment. I recommend it highly. And I realized now that it was a lot smaller than I originally intended, because I saw the hill and I thought to myself, oh, wow, all I had to do was walk back up that hill. That's where the car was. But at the time, everything just seemed so mammoth and so big that
right.
we had no idea where we had parked.
Some strange phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Also, it probably played a small part in that you were mostly pretty high for most of the time. So
well, it's funny. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I subsisted on OPD, which is other people's dope. And they were very friendly and offered me hits and so forth, and wine. I remember the warm red wine I was drinking, marijuana, hashish. That's it. Those two drugs.
So not necessarily mind altering, but still.
Yeah, just put us in a good mood, and everybody was so friendly and so cooperative. And the vibe was, I know it sounds corny to this day, but it led to the success of the festival under horrible conditions. And that's why we're talking about it 50 years later. Because I don't think there's ever been a time in human recorded history where 500,000 people were in one place at one time with not enough food, water, bathrooms, add horrible weather, and not one reported instance of violence. It's incomprehensible.
I was thinking a lot about that while I was reading the book, and the time that this took place, and this generation of young Americans, and how there was this movement at the time coming out of, well, we were still very much steeped in Vietnam, of course, and other things that had been going on at that time. And this generation of people, of which you were certainly dead in the middle there of, or included in, really believed that they could change the world, that through peace and through love, that you guys could change the world forever and really make a difference, And then you all of a sudden got together in this concert, and it was so successful, and it was almost like, see, here's a case where we can prove that our philosophy actually works, that we can do. And so I think, and I'm sure because it was never repeated quite the same, there's, of course, Altamont and everything else, but that had to be this real feeling coming out of that festival for those who went, or even for those who just knew about it, that there was a real sense of hope about what you guys wanted to achieve, in the world.
Well, we were the peace and love generation, and we proved our credentials over 4 days. And I think all of us that were there carry it around with us. Richie Havens says we're all still at Woodstock, and I totally understand what he meant by that. We carry it around with us like a sort of like a badge of honor, that for those 4 days under horrible conditions. Oh, and I forgot to add in that list of environmental concerns, no police, no security. That's the amazing thing. I mean, it was New York State's second largest city for 4 days. Yet there were and like any city, people died, people were born, etc. But not one. They looked back at the records of any complaints of there were complaints about the phones, about the water, about the sound system, but not one reported instance of violence, even when the hot dogs ran out. I mean, I remember going to the hot dog stand that I had been frequenting on Thursday and Friday and getting some food because we subsisted on hot dogs on Thursday, Friday. Come Saturday, and they said to me, I'll never forget it, we're out. We ran out of food, dude. And I go, well, fine. Where's the next hot dog stand? And they go, no, you don't understand. There's no food left. I go, well, what are we supposed to do? And they go, sorry, pal. And so there was no food.
Man. So eventually, though, community did come together. The outlying town nearby, people gathered or were helping, bringing in food with, I'm sure, in cooperation with the people that were running the the concert, correct? Like some food did come in, some supplies, some water, etc.
They came in flatbed trucks with vegetables and fruit and loaves of bread, the townspeople did. And I learned decades later about the existence of the hog farm. I had no idea at the time that there was a group of commune loving hippies that came from New Mexico that established a free food. They gave out, I think granola was invented at Woodstock. They came with 500,000 pounds of bran and oats and flour, and they handed out this slop to waiting people. I would have ate there. I didn't know it was existed. We didn't really travel too far between the lake and the stage. That's it. We could have explored and maybe found the hog farm. Thank God we didn't need the medical tent that we kept hearing about for people with bad trips or people that walked on glass while barefoot. You know, they had a medical tent. But I didn't know from the medical tent. I didn't know from the hog farm. We were in like a bubble of people right in front of the stage with one road to the lake and back. That was it. That was our universe.
So where was the lake in relationship to the stage?
It was right down there was this road that I would say it was stage left about 50 yards.
Oh, so really close.
It was beautiful. It was idyllic and a real perfect hippie tableau that I remember as if it was yesterday, because it was really hot when I went swimming. And I went there and I couldn't believe it. I had never seen a multitude of naked girls before at 18. I couldn't believe it. And
you're in paradise.
What is this? Look at this. But I was alone. Someone had to stay at our spot. So when me and Neil would leave the spot, one guy would always stay. So we always had one guy at the spot. And luckily, the people next to us had planted a flag with a big peace sign on it. And that was our marker to know where we were, so we could find our way back to where we were. So I get to the lake, and I see all these breasts, and I'm like, whoa. So I quickly divested myself of all my clothing. I put it off on the side of the lake, hoping nobody would take it. I knew I had a bunch of other clothing in the car. If someone stole my clothes, I have to walk around naked and find my car. But that didn't happen. I went swimming. I met the famous girl in the lake, which I wrote about in the book, although they censored some of it.
Wait a minute, they censored some of it?
They censored a lot of stuff that did not.
All right, so hold on. All right, so again, we're talking about your book, which is called, we're going to remind people, it's called Woodstock Back to Yasgur's Farm. Of course, referring to Max Yasgur, whose property the festival took place on, which is, even though you say it's published by
Krause Publications, which went belly up and was sold at auction, and Penguin Random House bought it.
Okay.
And
the sales are doing quite well, and congratulations on that. But in here now, again, you talk about it's the framework again is you and your buddy Chuck Yeager. No, what's his name?
Neil Yeager.
Neil Yeager, a younger cousin of Chuck Yeager.
Yeah, right.
Perhaps, you never know. But anyway, you guys went, and we've been talking about your experience going to the Woodstock. Now, one of the things you talk about is making your way to the nearby lake to cool off, and how all you encounter all those young hippie women who were, everybody was pretty much took off their clothes, or a lot of people did anyway. And this was something you didn't probably see too often in Newark, New Jersey, where you were growing up.
Never.
And you were in the lake cooling off, and you look across so far across the water, and you see a young woman looking back over at you. Correct?
Correct.
So you're thinking this is love at first sight.
Well, it was on my end, and who's to say that it wasn't indeed true love, instantaneous, like spontaneous combustion. And there's something that in her smile that drew me to her. And it's funny. You meet a girl when you're 18 at the library, in the park, at work, at school. You're usually not both naked. So that added an interesting tinge to our meeting.
Speak for yourself.
And I said, I tried to get her to come back with me to the spot that we had, and I kept bragging about what a wonderful spot we have right in front of the stage. Why don't you come back with us? And she broke my heart, and she said that she was there with her boyfriend. And
well, that's all in the book, but you say there's actually more to the story that was edited out.
Correct.
Now we're going to get the scoop here.
Well, we fooled around a little bit in the link. And they took that part out. I described her in detail in the book. They took that out. There were a number of other it's interesting what they took out and what they didn't take out. I talk about Janis Joplin at length in the book. And after her band performed at Woodstock, she continued her tour. And one of the stops was Asbury Park Convention Hall, the same hall that I was going to go see Led Zeppelin in. And when she played in Asbury Park Convention Hall, Bruce Springsteen was at that show, and he was leaning against the wall because he was like a local celebrity at that time. He had hair past his shoulders, and he was watching the band.
Did you know who he was back then?
No, not at that time, no.
Okay.
And he was watching Janis, and Janis used to have a habit of picking up what she called local talent at each tour stop, and she would invite him back to her hotel room. Sometimes she would invite him back on the tour bus. Sometimes she would even take him to the next city with her. But she liked meeting boys and girls, and she saw Bruce and she was attracted to him, and she went over to him after the set. It was 2 sets. In between sets, she walked over to him and she goes, "Stick around after the show, honey. We'll have some fun." Well, Bruce hightailed it out of there really fast. He wanted no part of doing that. So, and that story, which has been corroborated in other books, they took out for some reason.
Now, if I was Bruce Springsteen, who recently wrote a book called Born to Run, right?
He had written, at that time, in 1969, he was in a band called Steel Mill. And they were actually going to play Woodstock. But for some reason, they didn't. So Bruce Springsteen could have played Woodstock in his first band, Steel Mill, which was like a heavy metal kind of band.
Right. My point is, though, Bruce recently wrote a memoir.
Yes.
Born to Run.
Yes.
And does he talk about that, or has he been on the record talking about that incident with Janis?
Yes.
You say
Peter Ames Carlin. That's the guy that wrote the Bruce book. Peter Ames Carlin. He said to that author, he confirmed that indeed that happened.
I see. So, and Bruce didn't stick around, and there's no disparaging Janis in this. I mean, we all know she was a
rock star. Rock stars like to have sex with all kinds of people. Just because she's female doesn't, there's no derogatory emphasis on this. Look at Gene Simmons of Kiss bragging on TV that he's had 10,000 women. Nobody looks askance at that.
But how many had him?
Janis was a rock star, like a male rock star. She partook.
I agree with you. It's kind of an odd thing to take out because it's in a way it's kind of a neat story connecting 2 generations of rock stars.
Yeah, well, luckily my publisher, my editor, I should say, Paul Kennedy, who did, I got to give props to Paul Kennedy because he was right. In so many instances, he was right. He took out some of the stories that disrupted the flow of the narrative. He picked every single picture in that book. There's over 250 pictures in that book. He juxtaposed the pictures with the prose on each page so magnificently, wrote all the photo captions. He did such a marvelous job that I can't get too heavy on him taking out. He took out my JFK quote. I was upset at that at the time. John Kennedy, in his 1960 inaugural speech, basically predicted the rise of the counterculture. And
because he knew demographically there was going to be this enormous new generation that were going to have an impact on the country in various ways, is what you mean.
He was right. He predicted the rise of the hippie. I went back and I read that speech, and I was so impressed that I reprinted it in the book. sort of set off as like a sidebar. I thought that was a beautiful addition. Out it goes. So fine.
Yeah. I guess the editor makes the tough calls, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Was there anything else that was left out? I guess, in this time we're going through, maybe you just want to be careful about the lady in the lake.
Yeah. As I say, I described her body in exquisite detail, and he took that whole thing out.
Anyway, we'll leave it for the uncut version. But so you ended up going and rather seeing all of your heroes, it sounds like, just about anyway.
Yeah, we were very musically inclined back then. It was very interesting. A couple of Jewish white kids from Newark, New Jersey, who loved all of these acts. How did we find them? How did we know about them? There was no internet. There was hardly any magazines. Cream magazine, Crawdaddy, Rolling Stone. These were the magazines. TV shows like Shindig, Hullabaloo, Ed Sullivan, where the one American Bandstand, Where the Action Is, was another TV show I would run home to during the week to get home by 4 o'clock to see this show called Where the Action Is. We knew about these bands.
Are you in touch with your friend? What was his name again? You said
Neil Yasgur.
Still, is he around? Are you still in touch?
We lost touch for a few decades, and we recently found each other again because of Facebook. And then when I did when I set about writing the book, I asked him if I could interview him for the book, and he said yes. So now we're back in touch. Neil is an amazing character. I mean, Neil has written 9 books.
Really?
9 successful books. He's a corporate self-help guru with a big retreat up in Massachusetts somewhere where executives go to cool off and to find out how to deal with concerns, environmental concerns, social concerns. And he's so successful. Every winter he takes off and he goes to Key West, Florida for 2 months and then comes back. I hail him.
Wow. So he really went in a different direction.
He did. He went in a different direction. God knows how we got off on that tangent, but he's very, very successful.
Sure. Well, I'm sure quite a few people that went there. I mean, look at the sheer number. 500,000 people went. There's going to be a significant number of people doing just about anything you can think of. But,
yeah, that's true.
But when you talk to him for the book, did that experience, with you, in other words, I guess what I'm getting at is obviously just having written this book, which again is called Woodstock Back to Yasgur's Farm, the 50th anniversary, that experience has really defined a big part of who you are today, even. And I'm just wondering if there's some of that still with, let's say, Neil, for instance, one of the few people maybe you're in touch with who was at Woodstock. I mean, yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, he kept it within his heart his whole life, and as a result, despite his success in a non-musical realm, he's all about the music. He's still all about the music, constantly.
Really?
Yeah, the concept of music as salvation started at Woodstock. In other words, as long as the music is playing, everything will be fine. It doesn't matter how cold or hungry or tired or thirsty you are. It doesn't matter how uncomfortable you are or what your situation is, as long as the music is playing. And that persists to today. That's why the hardest thing about Woodstock was Sunday, when they had to stop the music for 4 hours. And I freaked out.
Because of the storm.
That was hard. Yeah. It was pouring rain, and then the freeze sets in. I mean, it's August, but after the rain, I was in my wet clothes. I was freezing and hungry and cold and tired, and I had to go to the bathroom, and it became not fun anymore. And Neil was gone, and I couldn't find him. He went off to find a phone booth to call our moms to tell them that we were okay, and he didn't return for the longest time. And the brown acid started setting in right around the time that Neil left, and the heavens opened up, and there was no music, and I panicked.
Yeah, I imagine you must have. You were only 18 years old, too, let's remember. And so finally, only 4 hours. I mean, I'm sure it felt like a significant amount of time at the moment.
That was a significant amount of time. Think about it. You're in this environment that you've never been in your entire life. There were those that helped, and there were those that just stood there and gawked. And unfortunately, I was of the latter category. But guys that you would be afraid to meet on a dark street in Newark, New Jersey, where I was raised, wound up being the most helpful, wonderful people. It is true. Everyone helped each other cope with an impossible situation. They built fires. They gave me food. They gave me a blanket to keep me warm. People really, really helped each other at Woodstock.
Getting back to your original thing you said about how 500,000 people all in one small, relatively speaking, one small location, and not a single incident of violence, not a single transgression in that regard.
And no security.
And no security.
Yeah, this is what we take away. This is why the 50th anniversary may have come and gone, but this event will last forever. And I consider it my sacred duty to talk about it for the rest of my life. I mean, over and above this book, people have to realize what happened those 4 days. It had never happened before, and it certainly hasn't happened since.
No. And what do you make of the recent attempt at doing a 50th anniversary concert, Woodstock?
I can't really speak to Michael Lang's failure to replicate it in 2019. I can tell you that I was at the museum at Bethel Woods for those 4 exact days, where they had John Fogerty and Ringo Starr and Santana and the Doobie Brothers, and it was a wonderful event. But funny enough, and ironically enough, the same storm came back on the same day at the same location. We had to be taken out of the writer's den where we were all selling our books and put into a more secure location. And the writer's den, which was a tent, practically came down in the heavy winds. I couldn't believe that 50 years later to the day, in the same location, the same storm came back.
It was a reunion.
It was a reunion in more ways than one.
So they had a book event at the museum, you're saying?
Yeah, it was called the Writer's Den, and me and about 6 other writers with books were all hawking our books to the folks that came. It was grueling, man. It was brutal. Hard work. Here I had been feted by the press, on television, on radio, as an author, and then when it gets time to actually be behind a table dealing with the public, trying to sell my book in front of 6 other authors who were also trying to sell their books. It was sort of an untenable situation, and I had to deal with folks coming up to my table, looking at my book, and walking on. It was a real slap in the face of reality. I think I sold 8 books the first day, and then the next day, like 12, and then I came back a third day, and I sold like 5 more books. It was hard.
Oh, it was hard.
Oh, it was brutal. Yeah.
Huh.
It was work. It goes along with being an author, is selling your book. But the disparity between being treated like a rock star by the press and then being treated like a salesman that's trying to sell snake oil. Okay, fine. And then they would always say, well, how is your book different from that guy's book? Well, I was the only author in that damn tent who was actually there. But I can't like promote my book to the exclusion of my fellow authors. It was very uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, I imagine so. You of those other 5 authors, none of them were at Woodstock?
No. Oh, wait. There was one guy. Hold on. There was one guy that was at Woodstock, and he wrote about it. But me and him were it. The other folks were not there.
They should have been interviewing you guys.
I was. A Danish TV crew interviewed me for a primetime special in Denmark.
Oh, great. Well, back when that references nicely, circles back to my experience in Copenhagen in 1986, I think it was, when I saw Motley Crue.
That's right.
for
nice.
Metal Maniacs, or for not Metal Maniacs, for Metal Edge or Metal, one of the metal magazines. I was hoping that you were going to say, as you were signing books. So I was hoping you were going to tell me when you're at the Bethel Museum and you were signing copies of your book, that some woman was going to approach you and you were going to look in her eyes, and there was going to be 50 years later, the lady in the
50
lake.
years later and realize who it was. Well, I have a joke, I always say how, I'm expecting one of these days some old 70-year-old woman's going to come up and go, I was the lady in the lake. But it did happen, actually, at the Friars Club. I was on the dais at the 105-year-old building. I was on the dais with two fellow authors, Tommy James of Tommy James and the Shondells, and Gene Cornish, the lead singer of the lead guitarist of the Young Rascals. And after the event was over, they had us all signing books. And wouldn't you know it, indeed, a woman came up, a very well-dressed, well-heeled older lady, and said to me that she was the girl in the lake. Now, of course she wasn't. She was just sort of coming on to me, but I thought it was sort of cool.
That is cool. And why not? You should have gone with it. What's the harm?
I did.
Oh, good for you. Good.
I did.
You were game. But we should also mention you're happily married and
indeed
beautiful daughter. How old is she? How is she doing?
She's doing great. She gave me two beautiful grandchildren. We adopted Jessica from Korea when she was 3 months old. The stork brought her to America. The airplane. We waited at the airport for her, and she's just a fabulous gal. She graduated Penn State University with a degree in agricultural science, and she was written up in a book called Women That Are Changing the Way We Eat. She's really into organic and buy local, buy fresh, and now she works for EP. What does she work for? ELP, not Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but the Environmental Leadership Program, where she holds seminars on how to be environmentally friendly and still get your business done. So I'm very proud of her. And I also have a son who's a videographer and does hip-hop videos, and he's very talented. So, yeah, my two kids are great.
That's great. Congratulations. And now your third child is now available where books are sold. It's a fun read, great photos. The foreword, we should mention, is written by one of the Woodstock performers, Country Joe McDonald, who is, of course, whose career blew up huge after as it did for many of the performers at that weekend. It really helped a number of the careers of some of the smaller acts became major acts as a result of playing at Woodstock. And, of course, the documentary that came out subsequently.
Yeah, I consider Country Joe McDonald the heart and soul of Woodstock. He wrote the foreword to the book, and he provided the grandiose moment of them all when, I believe it was Saturday afternoon, he did the fish cheer. And he yelled out, "Give me an F," and we gave it to him. "Give me a U," and we gave it to him. "Give me a C," we gave it to him. "Give me a K," and we gave it to him. "What's that spell?" And we shouted it out. "What's that spell?" And we shouted it out. You can't realize how liberating, how hilarious, how cathartic, how wonderful it was to shout out that word with tens of thousands of other people right around you. In 1969, when you're 18, it was I could say the highlight of the whole festival.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and I got the people at the Friars Club to shout it out 50 years later when I told that story. So, way to go, Country Joe.
I guess not many people nowadays considering, the use of the word, but back then it was not bandied about quite so frequently as it is now, and it was still kind of a taboo thing to do.
It was wonderful. It represented pure and total freedom.
I bet. Wow. Well, I feel like as you described the concert, it put me there, as it did reading the book. It puts you there. So while it's not the same thing, dear readers, I recommend reading it if you're curious about what that experience is like, right from the horse's mouth, somebody who's actually lived it and breathed it for those 4 days and who was, like, as you described, so close to the action. So thank you for...
So the thing that people really love about this book, if I may interrupt...
Oh, please do.
Is that there's a compendium in the middle that's set off from the prose with all 32 acts, the time they went on, the time they went off, their instrumentation personnel-wise, a set list, a list of their best albums, how much they were paid, and a quote from each artist. People seem to like that. Plus, at the end, there's a page called Invited to the Dance, But... the superstar bands that were invited to perform at Woodstock, but for one reason or another did not. Bands like the Beatles, the Doors, Simon and Garfunkel, Chicago, one after another. Tommy James and the Shondells.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin was invited. Jethro Tull. Hey, Michael Lang's first pick to close the festival wasn't Jimi Hendrix. It was Roy Rogers, the singing cowboy, and he wanted Roy Rogers to sing Happy Trails to You to end the festival. He called up Roy Rogers' people, and they laughed in his face. So there's a different story for each superstar artist as to why they didn't play Woodstock, and that's becoming a very popular page in the back of the book.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I would have left it out, and I appreciate it. Go pick up your copy of Woodstock, Back to Yasgur's Farm. Do yourself a favor. It's a beautiful book to have as well. It's just beautifully packaged and lots of beautiful photos. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading it.
Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. We'll do it again soon.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you, Mike.